Namaste and welcome, beloved mighty companions. Wow, it just seems like such a reflection. I'm just going to slow that down there. Okay. So many mighties are just jumping on board and really encouraging everyone. I know someone asked for a joining partner, and I don't think there was someone today. So I'm really going to encourage everyone to jump a join. It was so beautiful that she asked. I think it was Catherine was asking, and if you can jump a join, really, that's where the speed up is he's offering. Now, the ego doesn't want to do that because it wants to judge the brother. Like, am I getting the right brother for chapter 20? We're just praying over every match. Just pray to Jesus and listen to Jesus for whoever we're putting together. So we're going to start we didn't join yet on the Spanish, but we are going to very shortly and pair up those who are interested on the Spanish side. So thank you for stepping forward. It's stepping into grace, really, this chapter 20. And we'll have some more joinings on that for sure, as well as some more joining in light sessions where we'll really delve deeply into the listening. This isn't something really to be timid about. The time for timidity with respect, like Jesus said to me, you're tolerating that. We're tolerating this. To not join is tolerating the denial. We're not stepping into divine power. And joining is a very deep part of the program. I think I've said when I looked it up or did a search, I think it came up like 400 times or something, the word join or joining. And we really have to learn what that is. It's really coming together to see what's already joined. But how we're really avoiding our brother is reflective of how we avoid God. Directly proportional. So the tiniest twitch when a brother comes near is a twitch around God, is the desire to deny ourselves heaven. The tiniest twitch. And below that is rage, is a killing field of rage. All those twitches is rage that's been suppressed. We got to unleash the rage within. Not to feel it or experience, we're really afraid of that, but to just simply see with Jesus, okay, I just put the seal on my coffin. It seems far from that. We first start out on this journey, it seems, oh, I'm really far away from death. I wouldn't want that. I want life. And it's not till he takes you into it sounds bad going into the basement. This is a happy trip into the basement. To look directly at where we're killing light in the mind, out of awareness, where we're choosing death. So, and the ego is going to use all kinds of little plays and dances with the devil to go, I'm not going to join. I love that line. That was so instructive. My guidance is, as soon as there's a my before guidance, it's not guidance. Okay to say, Jesus, yes, it's not guidance. So you say it's my guidance. Guidance doesn't come from a my. Guidance comes from all that is. It's what is. That's a really good clue. Any kind of contraction, like, I own it, or guidance always comes out of wholeness. It's always pointing up to infinite totality in service to the whole. And the deeper we go, we'll just see what that contraction is out of serving the whole. I need to have my little time tonight to read my little book. My little book. So the ego's little fiefdom, that's the little fiefdom. We can't see that the only way out is service to totality. That just availability to all that is. That's love. So there's no me time in infinite. There's just infinite, and it has no time. You know, it was always this feeling if I could just get away from somewhere, I could have peace. That is a big fat illusion. Or if I could just sit in silence. I know I saw that play. Like, you know, I'm just going to sit in silence. And if I'm really quiet and silence and I cut out all the noise around me, it doesn't work. Your silence itself, that's identity. So as soon as there are conditions, like I have to go sit over here to feel happy or to be silent, you know, if the dogs would stop barking or the donkeys baying here, we have like a nice selection. Dogs barking and donkeys baying and birds screaming. The birds are nesting out there. I can see them moving in. And they're a 24/7 for about 4 or 5 months while they're really young. So if we have our happiness depend on sound, we might as well just keep shooting ourselves in the foot every day just for fun, because that's what it is. As soon as there's a twitch, see that the light, infinite light of being, where we start, there isn't a twitch in light. So we're so contracted in the play of consciousness to have an experience of contraction, innocence contracting. That's why even when we see that light's here, we're going, well, where's the happiness? Well, it's squished out of us. We squish the happiness out by being this contracted body. You can't be happy in a body, not continually. Oh, that's a good one. Mm-hmm. As long as there's an idea that you're a body, that happiness will not be consistent. That's pretty direct. It's true. You can ask Jesus. Jesus, as long as I think I'm a body, can I have supreme happiness? No, because they're diametrically opposed. Spirit is not a body. It doesn't know what a body is. The light doesn't know. But we're like a perpetual twitch. You know, and that's how it feels here. You can ask the being, because you can't weasel out and go distract. We needed these environments where there's no way to distract from the way we would in the past and go crawl off, you know, somewhere to distract. So it's really like Muji says in the Sangha, you know, you can see it. It's like hidden under a sheet of glass, no place to go. And we need that. Because the self-delusion impulse, the relishing of self-delusion is very strong. So at first, when you're starting to look deeply, it just seems like it's perpetual twitch. When you really start looking. And Jesus just said, unequivocally said, that's the way out when you start seeing that. See, the ego's going to go, well, I'm doing something wrong. There's something wrong here. I'm twitching, you know. No, you're seeing how much you're twitching. How reactive we are to the slightest little, somebody reaches over to touch her shoulder to say good morning and you jump 3 feet. But then now we know, we can go, oh, that's something to be forgiven, because it's cause and effect. Something touch and we jump like a little frog. We can never be happy because we're always waiting for that. We're always desiring that experience of something coming up over our shoulder to get us. we were talking about the shark, how the shark in consciousness is hunting. It's hunting for proof. I am not loved by God. And then it hides in a diversity of fragmentation. So he's going to help us with that, because he wrote this book to capture all the fragmented ideas there are. But if we don't really look deeply, like, that's why he has the text and he has the daily lessons. But if we don't actually spend time with them on it, it's going to be 30 or 40 years, as opposed to, he can ask him if he can crunch that down for you. It's really a decision in mind to crunch it down and not drag it out on a timeline. It's just the admission that there's no place else to go to light. So I might as well look and just see that the light is not impacted by all this kerfuffling. So interestingly enough, we're on 27 in the manual. What is death? Okay, let's really find out what that is. It's an idea, first of all. It's a concept. Death is a concept. So let's just ask Jesus. Jesus, in the light of divine being, honesty of God, is death a concept? You actually can start breathing when you see that death, that there's no body and no death. It's just the beginning. I mean, you can celebrate when we see it, because it's like, it's the recognition that something here is beyond death. But we can see that already. We can see that there's light. There's infinite light of being. And then you can breathe. That's kind of, you start the coil sorts of unwind. You don't take it so seriously, but the habit is so addicted. And there's just a lot of stuff. It's going down in the catacombs with Jesus to really wash out those. We know there's no body. Ask Jesus. Do you already know there's not a body, that bodies don't exist? He'll tell you, you already know it. We pretend like we don't know. That's pretty hilarious. Like Tony Parsons calls it the open secret. It's not a secret. It's a desire to keep it secret from ourselves. That's the problematic piece of it. And not admit it. And then hold on to the play, really relishing that play in consciousness. But it's not just what's happening, it's what's desired. I'm asking Jesus, and I trust him implicitly as the last word on this topic. He's the only word on this topic for here, really, for me. I'm just asking, well, of course he would tell me that, I suppose. I'm asking, is there a greater power, more, I don't know of one in consciousness, actually. The recognition of divinity is helpful, sitting under the Bodhi tree. It really is. You know, we sit under the Bodhi tree and recognize, okay, there's light here. But without those unconscious desires released, I'm asking Jesus, if there's another way, Jesus, tell me. It'll take a long time, he says, and not through emotional release. This does not come from emotional release. It comes from the release of the desire. It comes through willingness to see it another way. It might release emotions. I mean, it's nothing bad about it, but the fastest way is to go, Jesus, what is this? What is this? What's this below? What's below my awareness right now? Show me. Like he says in the Course, it's always show me. So let's just have him show us, okay, we're going to go, like we don't have any idea what death is. We're going to put that on the shelf with the elf on the shelf. We'll put those on the shelf. and just kind of lay the whole idea of death aside, the whole idea of what we think life is. Actually, you have to lay death and life aside because those are both concepts. So we just put those on the shelf. Go before zero. Like Muji says, before zero. You don't know what zero is even. And just start with the light, because every time you look at something as the light, you're never going to be afraid. But if you look at with the ego, you're going to be terror. You're going to want to crawl under a rock. So if you feel like you want to crawl under a rock, it's just because we're looking with the ego's view. That's why he emphasizes the right mind. Look with the right mind, because as soon as you look with the ego, you'll go turtle. If you're feeling like going turtle, you're pulling in. I want to find a place to hide. You know, if you're feeling like that is the best, one of the best scenes ever. If you're feeling like the Joker, you know, he goes into the refrigerator and he takes everything out. He throws everything else, climbs in and closes the door. If you feel like you don't want to join, those are all the little signals. Those are the little, though they're actually big signals. They're like, wah, wah, wah. Drop shields, join, join, join. That's a join alert. Again, we're reconditioning. He's retraining us. The training is, instead of when attack seems to come on the Star Trek Enterprise and you go to red alert, you drop shields. The fastest in my defenselessness, my safety lies. So we drop, he's saying, drop the shields and join to see what's true. Have him help you look under, because we all look on. We just do that all day here. Okay, what is it? It's so helpful. It's a speed up, no doubt about it. If that's what the call of your heart is, I'm asking them, it takes 24/7 devotion. Because we've been 24/7 devoted to something other than God. Remember, he says vigilance for God and his kingdom. But the ego is going to do this. It's going to have the country club plan. I can have my little retirement house, and I can live near spiritually minded people. And I can spend like an hour a day reading the course. I'm just asking them. I'm open. You know, I wish well for all, really. I'm just asking. We can all ask Jesus. Is that going to take a long time? So there's nothing like bad about it per se, other than prolonged suffering, fear, afraid the coronavirus is going to get you. Some looking over your shoulder every day to see if something's going to get you. You know, it'll be in that play for quite a long time. So Jesus doesn't judge it, but we're here because we want to be on the rocket ship. Everyone who's called here wants that rocket ship. And it takes 24/7 devotion. I can't find to really, really look. And that we're really worth that devotion of daily looking on chapter 20. Nothing's more important than this, really, in life. What is death? Death is the central dream from which all illusions stem. Well, that's pretty clear. You know, even at the time when I was writing it, you know, the focus here was still on thinking about thoughts about death of a body. But he said that's a good place to start, you know, for us to see that death of a body does not exist. But it has to, like, it kind of blooms beyond that to see that death is really the play of killing light out of awareness, killing infinite out of awareness by going blank in the mind wandering and just being totally blank. That obliterates the light. So he's giving us light training. Come back to me, come back to me, come back to me, come back to me. And the more we practice it, the quicker Okay, what about this, Jesus? What about this? And more gets turned over to him. And that's where our happiness lies. It doesn't seem like it at first because you just want to run from them. But that turning into them, like you start getting the little love hugs from God, you know, the little joy lift. And that's just reminding us that we are joy itself. So we'll just look at death. Is it not madness to think of life as being born, aging, losing vitality, and dying in the end? It's such a play in consciousness, you know, I could see that. It just seemed like, well, that's just the way it is. That's the play in consciousness. Well, it's just the way it is. We're going to be born, aging, losing vitality, dying in the end. Is the light have age on it, or is it ageless? When we see the light, does it have age in there? You can ask Jesus, is it an assumption that I've been born? That's a big assumption. You know, and the sages would talk about that. What do you know about being born by direct experience? You've been told you were born. But when you look at direct experience, have you ever been born? Aging, losing, dying in the end. Jesus, is that a big fat assumption that I die? That's a good one to look at. Oh, did we lose Dyra? Where is she? We lost no Dyra? She got booted. Melissa, no Dyra? Or did we lose us?
I don't know.
Here she comes back. Oh, I forgot to tell her we're on What is Death, but she probably figured that out.
I said, she says I send a message that is connecting again.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Dennis, can you hear us okay? Good. Okay. We'll just wait a second for Dyra to Bill to get lined up. This death talk is a good talk. Because it's so good. We're being reminded there's no death.
Yay!
The ego's afraid to see that, but just ignore it. Oh, this is a good one. Here comes a good question he's given me. Okay, I'll wait for Dyra so we can hear it in Spanish. Okay. Okay, let's go. We're going for this one. Okay. Now, is it not madness to think of life as being born? Okay, so now we're going to start having the conversation with Jesus because we can, because we're love. And he said, any more, two or more gathered in his name. And so how many do we have here? We got enough to take it over.
17.
All right. We got enough, more than enough. It only takes two, but we brought in the extra firepower for this one. Okay. This is the extra firepower to see. Let's just ask him. We're all listen. Jesus, is it madness for me to think I die? Is that insane? Is thinking that I'm going to die insane? And hear what he says. Jesus, do I desire to be insane and think I die? Do I relish the feeling that kind of, it haunts you. You'll feel like you're in a haunted house all the time with that. So let's just ask them, do I like haunting myself with the idea of death? Do I relish the idea of death? Jesus, is death just an idea? And listen really carefully. This is a good time of listening. We have asked this question before, but now we need to consider it more carefully. Let's go all the way, really, because then you can really rock. We can all relax back in the rocket ship then. Because we are really living in a haunted house here. Haunted by the idea of death in the next moment. Something's going to happen to the body. That is one big fat distraction from seeing that nothing's going to happen to it. Unless we desire an experience. And even so, it still doesn't impact the light. Infinite light of being. It is the one fixed, unchangeable belief of the world that all things in it are born only to die. What's the joke? Other than taxes, death and taxes. Jesus says they're the same. They're both ideas. Okay, Jesus. Okay, so Jesus, help us, show us where we're tempted. We're leading ourselves into temptation around death, because that's the gig. Where do we really relish that? That is a really deep one to look at him with. Ask him to show you, Jesus, do I really, really relish the idea of dying in a body? Just relish it. But don't go for the first answer, because the ego goes, oh, I don't want to, that sounds horrible. Just ignore that one and go for the one Jesus tells you. And to see how much do I really like relish all this pain and suffering, and is there a lot of pride and pain and suffering and getting old and decrepit? Just really, I find that juicy. Go down and find the little devil's tail in there. Really, it's helpful when you see the little, boy, I want this. Because you'll see when that energy, when you see it, like when we see it so directly, that relishing of death, of a body dying, experiencing some kind of horrible death or something, it's a good thing to look at them with. So it releases out of the subconscious mind. How could we ever be at peace if there's a relishing of the death in a body experience below our level of awareness? We can't. Then we're just looking over for lightning. It's like, what movie was that? That guy, Benjamin Button, was that? The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, and this guy was struck by lightning 7 times or something in the movie. We're like looking over our shoulder. It's like, when's the Grim Reaper going to knock on the door? Yet it's a desired experience. That's pretty deep. Okay, let's go, Jesus. It is the one fixed, unchangeable belief. Okay, well then if it's a belief and all beliefs can be released with a miracle, let's ask for a miracle on the death in a body. Jesus, am I willing to accept a miracle on death in a body, that death happens to a body? This is regarded as the way of nature, not to be raised to question, but to be accepted as the natural law of life. Natural. Let's ask Jesus if dying is natural. That is unnatural. But I took it, in the play of consciousness, took it for granted. Body, we just keel over and it's done. But it's really until we see it's unnatural. Okay. The cyclical, the changing and unsure, the undependable and the unsteady, waxing and waning in a certain way upon a certain path, all this is taken as the will of God. Listen to how many times we've heard that in the play of consciousness. Well, I'm dying, it's God's will. That's an unmerciful God. Jesus, do I believe dying is the will of God? That's a good one to forgive really quickly. That's a really good one to forgive. Clear that one. And no one asked if a benign creator could will this. What kind of creator creates a creation and goes, okay, this is good. You're going to be terminal. I like you for 70, 80 years and then you get to bump off. That feels really benevolent, actually. But we assume that's true. We assume that it's God's will that things come and go. It's good to be clear on that. Does the light come and go? That feels really good to be clear on. Okay. Jesus, would a benign creator create death? And hear his answer. So the question is, Jesus, do I believe the creator is benign? Do I have a desire for an experience of an unbenign creator, a creator that creates death? Because if that's under the subconscious mind, that's what the experience is. The experience of a God of death, a God of war. The Old Testament, the God of the Old Testament coming to get you. That would make you wander around in the desert. The desert was just the symbol for wandering around, playing around in consciousness in the desert. See, the Israelites believed God was withholding, or that it took trials and tribulations to reach heaven. And that's just a symbol of the trials and tribulations. "40 years or how many years they were in the desert. Jesus collapsed that down, 40 days done. In the desert. Okay, leave. It's what a symbol, you know. Let's make this quick, people. In this perception of the universe as God created it, it would be impossible to think of him as loving. See, that's true. As long as we're holding death over our heads, God can never be loving. And we'll always be confused about what love is. This is the ego's play. So we can ask him, let's just be direct. Jesus, am I confused that death is love? Am I trying to get love through dying as a body? Am I trying to get peace through dying as a body? This is really direct looking. When we see that, we'll see immediately the upside down nature of the thinking system, the thought-based system. Of the ego. The only way the ego can survive is if the belief in death is love is under there, that death is salvation. Jesus, so might as well look at it. Let's see. Jesus, do I believe death is salvation? If he says no, we're great. If he says yes, then now we can just sit and work with them. Either way, do you see, it's the direct path to working with Jesus. So he can show us it's untrue, and that a miracle, it's a miracle. Remember, no order of difficulties of miracles. That means the death belief can be wiped off just as easily as any other belief. We just tend to hang on to it more and deny the miracle for that. You can ask him, Jesus, am I denying? Do I want to deny myself a miracle on the death of a body, seeing that it's unreal? That's when we really start that direct conversation. Because we can't be happy. How could anyone be happy when they're believing they're dying? They have to duck and cover. They have to be in their house to be safe from the coronavirus. Can we not see how ridiculous it really, we start to see how ridiculous it is. And I admit it felt very normal. As I said, I was a prepper. Look at the one he brought over to the other side, man, a prepper. You know, I'm surprised I didn't prepare for the zombie apocalypse. We are living the zombie apocalypse in the mind. It's a desired experience. Ask Jesus. That's hilarious. Jesus, do we desire an experience of a zombie apocalypse? And see if he tells you that you're not living one now. The apocalypse is the denial of light and the belief that the body dies. That's the apocalypse. That's the zombie. So we go around in the dream all day long suffering, believing it's real and it's true and the body's going to die and everybody's going to keel over and something's going to be taken away from us. But you can't keep it if you talk to Jesus. And just have a sit down. This is like direct looking at death here. For who has decreed that all things pass away, ending in dust and disappointment, despair, can but be feared. So let's just ask him directly, Jesus, do I have a desire for a fearful God? Because that's what will be experienced if it's desired. So it's good. Let's go straight turkey and go, Jesus, do I desire a fearful God as experience? It's the only way the ego can survive, to have a fear, because a loving God changes the game completely. When you see God is truly benevolent under every circumstance, and you see that we have not been benevolent with ourselves under every circumstance, and you see that they don't line up, we see that's not lining up. Now it's an open field to go to Jesus and say, I'm wrong. Really wrong. I really want to be wrong about death, Jesus. Even if you're not sure you're wrong about death, tell him you just really, really do want to be wrong. You're ready to be so wrong about it. I said, Jesus, that helpful? He said, that is love, to be wrong about death. I said, Jesus, we can, so much love comes. Can we ask for a miracle on death? Now you're really, okay, so first you're standing on the launching pad and you're joining a bunch. When you join, see, all the rocket engines are lining up together when you join. You can't tilt sideways, especially with this way Jesus has given us of joining. There's no weasel room because you're going directly to him and he's showing us where the little kerfuffle is down there in the basement. You're lined up. Then once you have the conversation with him and you're hearing him tell you directly, which he's telling you here, but it's nice when it comes. He's going to keep pointing the light, 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 and you're following light, light, light. And it's like, wait, holy smokes. All there is light. The light's not coming to get me. I'm running from it. I'm trying to kill it out of my awareness. Then it's open game. Then it's like, all right, Jesus, I'm going to bring it all to you. But when we shrink back like little pansies, like we're little pansies, he can't help us. We're divine beings pretending like we're weak and we can be tilted with the wind. That's why he says, rely on my strength in this until such a time as you're ready to step into your strength as the divine being that you are, or we are. But it's really helpful. Keep looking at the light to see that the light is benevolent. For who has decreed that all things pass away, ending in dust and disappointment and despair, can but be feared? He holds your little life in his hand by a thread. That is just, can you feel the threat there? That just feels heinous. Because it's a desire for an experience of having it be heinous, like a heinous God. The God that would cast us out of heaven. Let's just be relieved, because this is when the relief comes, when we see we desire the experience. Jesus, did I desire the experience of being tossed out of heaven? And when he says yes, it's humbling, but it's happy humbling. Even if I desire an experience of being tossed out of heaven, can I really leave? No. But it's good to hear it from the one who knows. Now, the question is, will we believe him? If we don't believe him, then we can ask for a miracle. See, that's what miracle is going to take care of, that belief that there's death. It's a good deal he's offering. I wrote David Hoffmeister. David, Jesus is offering a really good deal here. But for a time, it doesn't seem like a good deal. He's offering us giving nothing and getting everything. Giving up nothing and getting everything, because we are already everything. Casting pearls before swine. Oh, casting our inheritance. Okay, Jesus. Desire is casting out the inheritance. It's tossing it out. That's how the play of consciousness tossed out the inheritance, through desire, not to have an inheritance. The prodigal son desired to have another experience. He wanted something else other than being in his father's kingdom. So he takes a little journey, becomes a little pauper, and he starves for a while. But finally, he goes back. And the father says, come on home. Come on home. The riches that you've always had lie here. And then in the play of consciousness, his brother goes, what about me? That's how the ego acts when it thinks someone else, quote unquote, is enlightened. Instead of being happy for them, you go and finding a reason for them not to rejoice in the homecoming. Love always rejoices in the homecoming. See, if we judge our brother as anything less than he is, we just judged ourselves. That's death. So then we have to find out what death is, because like I said, for here, it's a good stepping stone to see that there is a belief in the death in the body. I'm talking to Jesus about this, and that the understanding that death does not exist will be outlasted for a long time by body identification and the desire to experience death. Because that's how addicted we are to consciousness. Even when we see that there's something here that's infinite, just relishing that body identification so much that it would to kill light out of the mind, divine being out of the mind. He holds your little life in his hand, but by a thread, ready to break it off without regret or care, perhaps today. Okay, I admit it, Jesus, I did feel that. So it's a good stepping stone to maybe question whether or not there's desires below our level of awareness that God not be benevolent. That God's going to strike me down imminently. Or if he waits, yet it is the ending certain. Who loves such a God knows not of love, because he has denied that life is real. Oh boy, that's a deep one. Jesus, can I ever see what true life is as long as I believe the body dies? And here is the answer. We cannot know it, because Belief in the death in a body is the desire not to know what real life is, the big L. It's a good one to see through with them quickly, that the body dies, the belief in that. Because you also, yes, he's saying you can't have an experience of a benevolent creator either, as long as there's this the haunted house that God's coming to get you to kill the body and take it. It's like the jig starts being up when we give up those base beliefs. It's a big crack in the ego's plan. As soon as we see no death. But then the play in consciousness to be identified with the body, even when we know there's no death, that's what needs to wash out then. Jesus, do I relish denying that capital true life is real, just denying that? Do I relish keeping the body real? And then you go with him till he says no. Just keep releasing that energetic investment and just watching. You'll feel the urge of it. As we were just talking about it today, like Irene and I were talking about these body identification things. And when you keep going with them, you'll start to recognize that movement out into form, that relishing, the wanting of something. I don't know if it'll help, but can we close these? I think my door is closed. I'm not sure. Can you check and then we can close that door? Death has become life's symbol. It just, oh my gosh, it's insidious. We really think this ego thing is our friend. It's not our friend. We want to nurture it. We want to, like Muji says, don't be kind to your mind. You're too kind to your mind, the wrong-minded. That's the other thing. Sometimes in these compressive experiences where you come in, where there's a deep look and you see the viciousness of it. How really, don't you see how totally vicious it is? You won't like it so much. That's why it's helpful to do that deep looking, because the real viciousness shows itself and that we hid. And then we can really be onto it and see, no, this is not my friend, this thing. And it's a desired experience for viciousness. The ego's going to want to run, but when you turn into it, you'll see how much divine power comes in and how you're backed by Christ consciousness. You're just totally, how heaven's behind you. Death has become life's symbol. It's a symbol of life. That's why the crucifixion, why do we think the crucifixion is the symbol that was chosen? Christ hanging on the cross. Well, first of all, it's hard. You can't really have a picture of a resurrection, but that doesn't mean you couldn't. But in the play of consciousness, what was the choice? This is so great to see. I'm asking Jesus, a helpful symbol, but just notice that. What will we look up at in all the churches in the world? We would look at a body just mutilated hanging on a cross. That's what we would look at. Yet even the spirit can use that, because when that transforms, when you look at that and see infinite love in it, the infinite love of God in that picture, God is in everything I see. You can see the flip in that. What the ego would use for terror, God uses to restore his son to the recognition of his infinite nature. That's powerful. Death has become life's symbol. So there it is, right there, the symbol. His world is now a little battleground where contradiction reigns and opposites make endless war, where there is death. Where there is death is peace possible. is peace. Oh, where there is death is peace impossible. That's how he made it a sentence. Where there's death, peace is impossible. Can't be found. So at one level, we look at the death of a body. It's helpful. Then we have to see all the play in consciousness to kill the light out of awareness. But it's because and see it's just another play within consciousness to suppress the recognition of infinite light. And then you're onto it. You're totally onto it when you see that the whole gig is to suppress light out of awareness. Then you can look in earnest and ask for help, 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 help. And see we can't do it without him. Death is a symbol of the fear of God. That's a relief when he tells you you no longer have fear God. You'll know it. When you see there's nothing to fear in God, because the entire ego's substratum, its entirety depends on the fear of God in that little play in consciousness, that God is fearful. Once you recognize that the light is not fearful, it's just here and there's nothing you can do to hide from it or get away from it. Like, oh, nothing's going to actually happen. And then you see that in the light is all answered in the light. And then you can query on the light, which is talking to Jesus, and it'll answer all the questions. His love is blotted out in the idea, his love with a capital L, which holds it from awareness like a shield held up to obscure the sun. The grimness of the symbol is enough to show it cannot coexist with God. It holds an image of the Son of God in which he is laid to rest in devastation's arms, where worms wait to greet him and to last a little while by his destruction. It's the continual planning for death. You know, I'm going to plan for our funeral. We have funeral plans, and we're going to have a succession plan. We're going to have a will. And then we're going to fight over, after our parents die, we're going to fight over whatever they own. They're all just squabbles to avoid the kingdom is here now, that there is no death. That's pretty deep. Yet the worms as well are doomed to be destroyed as certainly. And so do all things live because of death. Devouring is nature's law of life. God is insane and fear alone is real. Jesus, can I ever be at peace? Will I always be in a state of fear if I believe death is real? And here's the answer. Can I ever have peace if I believe death is real? Because the very nature of the belief in death is to prevent peace. But to pretend like peace can be found through death, it's a very convoluted kind of gig there. Jesus, do I believe peace can be found through death? The curious belief that there is a part of dying things that may go on apart from what will die does not proclaim a loving God nor reestablish any grounds for trust. If death is real for anything, there is no life. Death denies life. It's a denial of the big L life, all that is. It's a way, it's a perception in the mind to limit the recognition of light, to try to put a limit on infinite light of being. I'm going to limit infinite light. And it's a requirement to be peaceful in the future. See, when I keel over, rest in peace. If death is real for anything, there is no life. Death denies life. He's really clear on this point. So it's really good to ask them whether or not there is a belief that anything good comes out of death. Jesus, do I believe anything good comes out of death? In honesty. Because the ego go, oh no, I don't believe that. I think death is horrible. I'm asking Jesus, the way through it is to be watching a movie and watching a bunch of bodies get killed and then see how much it's relished. That is very instructive. And admit, oh, I'm really relishing looking at this. From the perspective, the ego just relishes all of that. The endings, it relishes beginning and endings. Infinite light doesn't know what a beginning or ending is. You can ask. In the light of divine being and honesty of God, does the light know what a beginning and ending is? Can't find it. Thank you, Jesus. But if there is reality in life, death is denied. Not little L, big L. Totality, life. God is life. Identity is life. True identity is life itself. And Muji would say that you are life. You are life. Life is what's here beyond the form. Form has nothing to do with life. You can ask Jesus, Jesus, does form have anything whatsoever to do with life? Not a thing. No compromise, and this is possible. Thank you, Jesus. Death is compromise. So there's either infinite light, no beginnings and no endings, or there's death. There is either a God of fear or one of love, infinite, unchanging, no beginnings, no ends, supreme happiness. Thank you, Jesus. The world attempts 1,000 compromises and will attempt 1,000 more. Not one can be acceptable to God's teachers. Now, this is a good line to look at. Thank you for the reminder, Jesus. Not one compromise can be acceptable to a teacher of God. Not one. Because any compromise is death. It's accepting death over infinite light, infinite supreme happiness. It's the desire for the delusion that God is dead, that bodies die, for pain and suffering. You see that there can be no compromise. The ego just runs in terror. When I would thought about that too. They talk about that in Living Miracles. No compromise. There's no compromise. I, through the play in consciousness, didn't have a clue about what that meant. It basically means in the light of divine being, in honesty of God, is there something here infinite that's unchanging? Anything other than that is compromise. That's what compromise is. Anything other than absolute reality is compromise. I just want to be, yep, that's what he says. That's compromise. Wow. The world attempts 1,000 compromises and will attempt 1,000 more. Not one can be acceptable to God's teachers because not one could be acceptable to God. Let's just ask. Because in a way it can sound like God's going to come down and beat you with a stick or something because it's not acceptable, but it doesn't work like that, you know? So we'll just look so we're clear. In the light of divine being, infinite light, is compromise acceptable in light? Does the light even know what a compromise is? Does it compromise itself, or just is it just is by our direct experience? It doesn't, see, compromise doesn't exist in light. compromises to be less than or more than what everything. And how is that possible to be less than or more than everything? Does death is a desire for an experience of being less than and more than everything? It's impossible to be less than or more than everything. There's just light, and it's everything. He did not make death. God did not make death because he did not make fear. Both are equally meaningless to him. Does fear mean anything in the light of divine being? Can we find that? Does like the infinite light of being have like a little fear pocket in there where it's kind of keeping fear? There's no fear in light. Light doesn't know what that is. The light test is the only test worth taking. We took school tests. How many years of school? We took the school, all kinds of tests. This is the only test. In the light of divine being and honesty of God, is death real? That's the only test that's worth taking right there. Ask Jesus. Does death stand in the light of infinite being? You see, the belief in death is compromise. All these beliefs are compromising ourselves. All these subconscious desires are compromising the Father's kingdom out of our awareness. That's why it's worthiness to look diligently. The reality of death is firmly rooted in the belief that God's Son is a body. And if God created bodies, death would indeed be real, but God would not be loving. There is no point at which the contrast between the perception of the real world and that of the world of illusions becomes more sharply evident. How he uses contrast. And that's why looking at the light and starting with the light of infinite being first. That's why he says, start with the light. Let's honor the light, the only thing that's shared, and see if death is real in there. Does that light have a shut off point, a little timer where it goes gone? Always here. There is no point at which the contrast between perception of the real world and that of the world of illusions becomes more sharply evident. Death is indeed the death of God, if he is love. And now his own creation must stand in fear of him. He's not father, but destroyer. He is not creator, but avenger. Terrible his thoughts and fearful his image. To look on his creations is to die. We have to see the wickedness of this, not in judgment, but to see the shadow we cast in our holy mind, in the play of consciousness, how it's just one big old storm cloud to obscure the light. And see that the light is benevolent. It's so obvious that it's benevolent when we look. So, Jesus, do I have a desire for something other than a benevolent Father? If you believe in death, you do. Well, that's direct. If we believe death is real, that is a desire for a non-benevolent God experience. It can't make God non-benevolent because God is. It just is. It doesn't. Light doesn't have a mean bone in its light. It doesn't know what this death is. I love that's so fun. Jesus is fun. I think he really enjoys teasing Ira. And yes, he does. It's very adorable. Okay. There's no point at which the contrast between perception of the real world and that of the world of illusions becomes more sharply evident. Death is indeed the death of God. He is love, and now his own creation must stand in fear of him. We're light, light, light. light, pretending that death is real so we can be afraid of God. Let's ask Jesus. Jesus, do I relish being afraid of God so I can pretend that death is real? It's helpful when you hear those little yeses in there. Humbling too. He's right again. We created, we love fear. Not we, consciousness loves that play. You can ask him, Jesus, do I really relish fear? Is that the gig here? Very humbling. See, we relish fear. He is not father, but destroyer. He is not creator, but avenger. Terrible his thoughts and fearful his image. To look on his creations is to die. See, we're just waiting for the next body to fall to be sad, or the next image to come and go, to have an experience over the images. So we have to see what's beyond all images. And the last to be overcome will be death. Of course, without the idea of death, there is no world. Let's look at that carefully. Let's look at this one really carefully with Jesus. Okay. The last to be overcome will be death. Of course, without the idea of death, there is no world. In the light of divine being and honesty of God, let's just be honest in there in the light. Is there a world in there? The world is an idea. It's just an idea. Death is an idea. We have to see through that with Jesus. See in the light that the world does not exist. In the light. All dreams will end with this one. This is salvation's final goal, the end of all illusions. And in death are all illusions born. See, there's not a body. Illusions are being born all day long. They're born and we give them life. Consciousness gives the illusion life. It gives it properties it does not have. It gives it it's actually death to the light. So the little ideas arise and we follow them around like rats down a hole to get lost and pretend that the light's not here. All dreams will end with this one. This is salvation's final goal, the end of all illusions, and in death are all illusions born. So that's a really good one to go for miracles on, the belief in death, that death is real. See, all these things are so robust. Like this whole lesson is so robust. You could just have nonstop joining on just when you feel the twitch over anything in the lesson. Then you just jump a join right after the sessions. That's what after the session, we have light circles here. And that's a lot of the things that come up in the lessons, right? We just look. Jesus, okay, show us what desires. Where did I feel a twitch in that lesson? Show me where the desires, and we just let him deliver desires out. What desire do I need to look at? In the number of times, like he said, you get surprised because you're thinking it's going to be one thing he's going to be showing you, and you're going to start seeing that's the play in consciousness to avoid really looking. Then he delivers out, boom. It's like, holy smokes. As I said, you can just feel the steam rising, but you're fine because you're infinite. The steam rising is it fair to say this is reunification of consciousness? Jesus says so. It's just the way it looks. But the light is unchanged. The light's unchanged. That's helpful to notice. That's an understatement. What can be born of death and still of life? What can be born of death and still have life? But what is born of God and still can die? Let's just get the real skinny on this from Jesus. Okay. What do we need to see here? Ask me everything, because you're making some big assumptions. One is that you die. That's what he's saying. He's saying that is a big assumption. Your assumption, you have a big assumption that you die. Are you willing to be wrong about it? Okay. Are we willing? Jesus, am I willing to be wrong about dying? The body dying? Am I willing to be totally and completely wrong about that? He says your happiness relies on this. Supreme happiness relies on the willingness to look directly to see that death does not exist. No such thing can happen to the Son of God. It's a good thing to look at, because you'll see when these plays we're in abject terror all the time, but we don't even see. Remember, he says tolerance, you have a high tolerance to pain. We're so used to being so embroiled in pain and suffering and relishing the experience, that we don't even see it. We get lost in it, in the play of consciousness. Like Jesus would say, you're too tolerant, you're indulging you're indulging in it. But it's helpful when he tells you when you're indulging. You want him to. You can ask him, Jesus, will you show me when I'm indulging in denial, in death? Oh, indulging in death. And he will. If you just tune in, he'll remind you when you're indulging in death. He says, yes. He said, that's what I'm here for, to show you where you're indulging in death, so that you can choose again. The inconsistencies, the compromises, and the rituals the world fosters in its vain attempt to cling to death and yet to think love real are mindless magic, ineffectual, and meaningless. Well, that's clear.
Wow.
Let's read that again. You start to see every one of these. When that little zinger, the little Jesus zinger, lands in your heart, you're going to be really happy. It's happiness seeing this. Okay. At first it doesn't feel like happiness, because you feel the ego feels threatened, but let's just let that bird land in the heart. The inconsistencies, the compromises, and the ritual of the world fosters is in its vain attempts to cling to death and yet to think love real are mindless magic, ineffectual, and meaningless. Well, that's basically everything in consciousness. He says, yes, that's all a consciousness is compromise. Yes. In a way, yes. I mean, God's not going to make it wrong. He doesn't want to make us wrong, but he's just saying, look, see this for what it is. It's not your true home. It's not your reality. You can play in consciousness for a while. You can play in consciousness and be the happy learner. In unified consciousness, awareness of dreaming, but awareness of dreaming, not being unaware that we're falling on our sword all day long. God is, and in him all things must be eternal. Jesus, am I willing to see I'm eternal? I'm just willing to look straight at it. Okay. Do you not see that otherwise he has an opposite, and fear would be real as love? Yeah, we got to quit sleeping on with our heads on death's door, Jesus agrees. So much love comes in that. So much love comes in that. And he tells me again, this need not be. He says, see your divine power. See your divine power. You are infinite light. Everything, and he's reminding me, everything else in that is compromise. It's just compromise. So anything other than anything other than supreme happiness. Jesus is anything other than supreme happiness compromise. See if he tells you no on that. He says, yes, anything other than supreme happiness is compromise. is death. Is that, yes, that's what he says. I trust him. But we have to see this because otherwise we're just trapped in the dredges. Do not believe. Okay. Do you not see that otherwise he has an opposite and fear would be as real as love? Teacher of God, your one assignment would be stated thus: accept no compromise in which death plays a part. He has to actually teach us what that is. That's what experience is. Here is the difference between where we're compromising ourselves, because the play of consciousness to obscure the compromise. That's why his guidance is so essential, because he's the only one knows where there's no compromise, where we're compromising ourselves. Do not believe in cruelty, nor let attack conceal the truth from you. What seems to die is but a misperceived and carried on illusion. That's all that dies. The illusion of death dies. You know, beings would go to Muji and say, I want to die before I die, meaning I want the egoic thought system, the idea of death to die. It cannot die as long as we have a desire for it as experience. Death is release of the idea that death is real. That's the only thing that dies. Even though you feel like you're dying sometimes on a spiritual journey. That's another reason, again, why we have to ask them when stuff's coming up. We have to ask them if it's a release or holding on, because we can't even tell. We're sure we're dying when we're releasing. But that's why we join, so we can be clear on that. Now it becomes your task to let the illusion be carried to truth. It's a gentle boat. It doesn't feel gentle. That's why I looked really quickly with him at all desires for it not to be gentle, for sure, and prayed for a gentle way. He goes, yes, just pray for a gentle way, and ask for miracles nonstop, that this be difficult, or because that's all the way consciousness plays. Dark night of the soul. I can see that. There was a lot of pride. I'm going to go through a dark night of the soul. Do I have to, Jesus? See if he says you've got to. No. Do I desire a dark night of the soul? That's a good conversation to have. Jesus, am I relishing having a dark night of the soul to wake up? If he says yes, boy, you just get that, set your chair next to the fire and sit there and have a quick chat to release all that. Join. See, anytime he says yes to something, like, do I still have this desire? That is where you get off the line and you hit the join button. Man, I noticed this. Let's look at it quick. And you'll start being the happy learner. The happy learner is going, he's showing me something to look at. Let's go. And, you know, that's the happy learner. You know, the ego's going, boy, I better run as quickly as possible from this chapter on down. Okay. That's, now it becomes your task to let illusion be carried to truth through joining. Join. Be steadfast in this. Be not deceived by the reality of any changing form. Changing form. Jesus, am I addicted to changing form? You can ask them. Good to check in. And then you go until he says no. See, where consciousness is the addiction to the play of the changing. That belief keep that experience of the changing being real in play. Truth neither moves nor wavers nor sinks down to death and dissolution. Let's just check in with the light. The only test, we're doing the light test. You know, this is a great test. This is even more powerful than, you know, when you go up this, but you can look at it this way. You know how those little light testers are? They're like a little light bulb and you plug it in and it goes on. That's a good test to do, where you go to the light and see, does the light move? The light of divine being move? Does it waver? Does it sink down to death and dissolution? Can the light of infinite being be dissolved? It just, after a while, gets easier to say, I think I'm that. I'm not sure I'm that, but Jesus says I'm that. Jesus, do you say we're light? See if you ask him 100 times a day, am I light, Jesus? See if he ever tells you no. He can't tell you no. Light's what you are. Truth is who you are. You are truth. You cannot speak truth. Truth does not come in speaking. Truth comes from where you're speaking from. You can only be truth. Because truth is all there is. Truth is life itself is truth. They're the same. Life, the big L, all that is. And what is the end of death? Nothing but this, the realization that the Son of God is guiltless now and forever. Nothing but this. But do not let yourself forget, it is not less than this. Okay, Jesus, one last. Do I have a desire to forget who I am? That's death. Forgetting who we are is death. Forgetting that we're light is death. That's all death is. It's the suppression of the light out of awareness. And pretending it's about a body or brother attacking or. So it's a thought to give away the inheritance of the Son of God, all that's given through thought, through consciousness. Jesus, will you help me not forget? It's not less than this. He said, that's love. To ask for help for remembering that you're light. That's humble. That's humble. To ask for help remembering that we're light. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you for joining us just to look so directly at death, to see that it does not exist. It doesn't impact us. In the light of divine being and honesty of God, is death real? Death is the idea that the Son of God has an expiration date. God would have you know otherwise. Amen. Sending love. The rocket ship brigade. Everybody point those hats up, put on the seatbelt. There we go. No death. Death has no dominion here. Love you.